Amid the vast snow and ice of the north, where the wind howls like the lament of lost souls, humankind has always been small and fragile against the cruelty of nature. There, mythology was born like a fire to warm the spirit, with stories passed down through generations teaching children to avoid danger and giving adults the strength to endure the endless darkness of winter. Among that treasury of myths, one tale in particular chills anyone who hears it, the legend of the cannibal giants lurking among the icy mountains, regarded as the land-dwelling counterpart of the Kalyapalik, the water creature known for snatching children. The Inuit and other indigenous peoples of Alaska believed that monsters did not only dwell beneath the sea, terrifying foes also hid within the snowy mountains and frozen cliffs. They called them the Tuniat cannibals, or simply, the cannibal giants. So massive were these beings that their footsteps left deep craters in the snow, and their roars echoed through valleys like breaking thunder. Yet what was most terrifying was their hunting habit. They never struck in broad daylight but instead waited patiently, hidden behind icy crags, only to emerge when a wanderer lost their way or when a child strayed too far, seizing their victim in an instant. The elders of the villages would say, "This is not just a tale to frighten you. The white snow can hide deadly ice pits, the strong winds can lead you astray. And if you think that in this desolate land there are only winds and wolves, you are mistaken. The giants are there too, waiting since long ago." They were described as towering like stone pillars, with skin pale and gray as frozen ice, tangled hair matted with snow, and eyes glowing red in the darkness like embers. Some legends say they were once human, those who, driven by hunger in the harsh winter, turned to cannibalism and were cursed by the spirits, transformed into giants forever consumed by insatiable hunger. From then on, they wandered the icy mountains, hunting human flesh to soothe the endless gnawing within. In Inuit villages, the tale of the cannibal giants was used as a warning for children. When night fell, mothers would whisper to their little ones, "Do not leave the fire light, do not stray too far from the village, for out there the giants are listening. They hear footsteps crunching on snow, they smell the scent of humans carried on the wind, and they will come. If you walk alone, their shadow will cover you before you can even cry out for help." The child, trembling with fear, would curl closer to their mother, never daring to wander outside. But this legend was not only meant to frighten children. For grown hunters, it was also a reminder of the dangers of the icy mountains. Straying too far, traveling alone, or losing the path home, any of these could mean vanishing forever, as if falling into the hands of the giants. In truth, hunters lost in blizzards, whose bodies were never found, only added strength to the legend. People believed that it was the giants who had taken them. One of the old stories often told began in a small coastal village. There was a curious boy who often ignored the warnings of his parents. One day, he spotted giant footprints in the snow, 3 times larger than a man's. Instead of fear, he felt curiosity and decided to follow them, eager to discover what had made such tracks. The farther he went, the more distant the village became, the colder the wind grew, and the taller the mountains loomed. Then, from within a mountain pass, he heard a heavy, ragged breathing like a storm itself. That was the moment the giant appeared, so tall it blotted out the last light of sunset. It is said that from that day on, the boy never returned. Only his small footprints remained, slowly covered by snow, vanishing forever into the shadows of the frozen land. Stories like this spread across the community, making the cannibal giant a symbol of mysterious disappearance and death lurking in nature. Another version of the legend tells that the giants did not only devour flesh but also stole the souls of their victims. Those souls, trapped within the monster's belly, cried out as the wind howled across the mountains. On winter nights, when the wind wailed like human weeping, The elders would say it was the voices of the captured pleading hopelessly from the stomach of the giant. To children, that explanation filled them with terror, keeping them close to the fire. To adults, it was a sacred reminder: always travel together, and never underestimate the power of nature. The cannibal giant was often compared to the Kalyapalik, the sea creature that snatched disobedient children. Yet unlike the Kalyapalik, who dragged victims beneath the waves, the land-dwelling giant carried its prey up into the mountains, to places no human could ever find. The two beings, one of the sea and one of the mountains, complemented each other like twin warnings, different in form, but sharing the same purpose: to protect the young and to teach humankind reverence for nature. Some say there were hunters brave enough to encounter the giant. On a distant journey, they saw a massive shadow looming through the swirling snow. Its eyes blazed red in the night like fire. Knowing they could not escape, the hunters raised their bows and shot fiery arrows. But the shafts shattered upon contact with its skin, as if striking solid rock. Only fire, the blazing torchlight, could drive it back, forcing it to retreat slowly into the shadows. From then on, fire became the symbol of life, the only weapon capable of repelling the giants. For this reason, in many rituals, the Inuit kept flames burning throughout the winter, as if to guard the village from the darkness of the frozen mountains. Some legends go further, saying that the giants only appeared during the longest winters, when the sun vanished from the sky for many weeks. In that darkness, they grew stronger than ever, roaming freely across the frozen valleys without fear of light. People believed that when the sun returned, the giants would retreat deep into the mountains, slumbering in the ice until the next winter. Thus, the return of sunlight brought not only warmth but also humanity's triumph over darkness and monsters. Curiously, some villages believed the giants were not entirely evil. At times, they appeared only to test humans, reminding them never to grow arrogant. One legend tells of a young hunter who wandered too far into the mountains and was lost in a blizzard. Certain he would die, he instead encountered a giant. Rather than killing him, it stared at him for a long time, then pointed toward the village. When the hunter turned, the snow ceased to fall, and the path home appeared. People said that sometimes the giants could serve as messengers of the spirits, guiding a human back to their community, but only if they showed courage and humility. Because of these many variations, the cannibal giant became a complex mythical figure, at once a bloodthirsty monster, a shadow of being lost, yet also a trial meant to make humans stronger. In the long northern nights, when snow fell endlessly and the wind howled against the cliffs, stories of the cannibal giants echoed around the fire, becoming an inseparable part of collective memory. The old would tell, the young would listen, and within those words, one could feel both trembling fear and reverence for the power of nature. One of the most famous legends tells of a village haunted by a giant for many years. Each winter, someone disappeared. At first, it was children who strayed too far, then even hunters who traveled alone. Their last traces were always the same: bloodstains scattered across the snow, or footprints 3 times larger than a human's, leading up the mountain and vanishing into the white mist. Fear gripped the village. Elders warned children never to step outside after dark, while hunters carried torches at all times, hoping to ward off the monstrous predator. It is said that on one moonlit night, a group of brave hunters resolved to follow the tracks and face the creature. They carried long spears, bows, and charms blessed by a shaman. The giant footprints led them through a mountain pass, into a cavern deep within the icy cliffs. Inside, they heard faint moans, like the cries of imprisoned souls. A shiver ran through them as they realized these were the voices of the captured, echoing from within the monster's belly. As they pressed deeper, The giant appeared so tall its head nearly touched the cavern's roof, its breath reeking of blood and raw flesh. The battle was fierce. Spears thrust and arrows flew, but its flesh was as hard as frozen stone. Only the blazing fire of the torches made it shriek in pain, its red eyes flashing in the night. In the end, the hunters realized they could not kill it. They could only drive it deeper into the cavern with fire, then seal the entrance with stone and ice, trapping it forever. The villagers believed that even now, the giant remains imprisoned within the frozen mountain, and whenever a blizzard rises, its roar echoes across the land, a reminder that the monster's presence must never be forgotten. Legends like this reflected a deep, primal fear: humanity was far too small against the immensity of nature. The icy mountains, the blizzards, the endless winters, any of these could kill anyone who lost their way. The giant embodied all those dangers, personifying the darkness so that future generations would feel fear and keep their distance. In many Inuit families, parents would warn their children, "If you wander too far from the village, the giant will come. It hears your footsteps, it smells you on the wind, and it will take you away never to return." Such warnings were both lessons in safety and proof of the power of legend. Children grew up believing the monster always waited outside, while in truth the real dangers were the cold, the hunger, and the vast wilderness. An interesting detail is that the legend of the Cannibal Giant did not belong to just one village, but appeared across many communities, each with its own variations. Some said they were demonic giants cursed by the gods. Others claimed they were once arrogant hunters, transformed into monsters as punishment. But the common thread was always the same: they carried within them an eternal hunger for human flesh, hunger for human souls, and that hunger could never be satisfied. One chilling variant claimed that the giants could mimic voices. They would often imitate the sound of a parent or friend calling in the wind, luring children away from the village. When the child followed the voice, they would be led into the mountains and fall into the monster's grasp. That is why elders warned, when you hear a voice calling during a blizzard, never trust your ears, for it might be the trap of the giant. Another version added an even more gruesome detail: the giant kept a massive leather sack filled with the bones of its victims. Alone in the dark night, it would take the bones out and strike them together, producing a clattering sound like drums, reminding itself that the hunger inside would. That hunger could never be soothed. The clattering of bones, echoing in the night wind, became a haunting memory for those who lived in the frozen lands. Yet not every tale was shrouded in darkness. Some legends spoke of humanity's triumph over the monster. Once, a young girl was taken by the giant. But instead of despairing, she used her wits to survive. She pretended to obey, feigned weakness, and waited until it slept. Then she built a great fire and threw burning embers into its eyes. The giant roared in agony, while she fled back to the village. From that day, the story was passed down as an example of courage and cunning, that even against overwhelming strength, humans could prevail if they relied on intelligence and the light of fire. On a deeper level, the Cannibal Giant carried symbolic meaning. It was not only a monster, but also the embodiment of cold death, a being lost, of bottomless greed. A being once human, cursed into monstrosity for eating its own kind. That was the moral lesson: never betray your community, never let hunger or despair drive you across the boundary of humanity. In a society where food was scarce and winter could claim lives, the legend became a warning: share, protect one another, rather than fall into cannibalism and turn into a demon. In fact, many scholars studying Inuit mythology have recognized that the legend of the giant was a way for communities to cope with fears of famine and the despair of losing loved ones. Instead of believing someone had simply perished from cold or hunger, they believed the giant had taken them. In this way, Death no longer felt meaningless, it became part of a myth, binding the community in a shared belief. Today, though modern life has changed much, the legend of the Cannibal Giant is still told, especially at cultural festivals or storytelling gatherings for children. Though no one truly believes there are monsters in the mountains anymore, its symbolic power remains, to remind humans to respect nature, to stay wary of danger, and to preserve tradition. The figure of the giant, seen through the lens of the 21st century, can be read as a metaphor for hungers that can never be satisfied: greed, selfishness, and the loss of one's soul. It reminds us that people need one another to survive, that we need the light of community to keep from falling into the darkness of isolation. Perhaps this is why, whenever the Cannibal Giant is mentioned, people shudder yet also feel grateful. For without such stories, how would children learn to avoid danger? How would humans remember that nature out there is always stronger than us? And how would we understand that it is unity itself that allowed people to survive for thousands of years upon the ice? When the last fire of a winter night flickers, when the story ends and children fall asleep in their mother's arms, the Cannibal Giant still lives, not out there on the mountain, but within the minds of those who listen. It lives as memory, as lesson, as the bond between one generation and the next. And that is the immortal power of legend.